Hi, everyone. It's me, Grace, and this is our second webinar. So I hope that we have some people joining us. Participants so far, let's see, I'll wait another minute.
Are we going to see them pop up?
We're, hold on. Let me see if I can play around with this.
Oh, three.
Participant,
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just waiting. Hi, Kim, Rebecca, Trudy.
We can count on Kim for sure. I'm just saying.
Kim, is Dave watching with you?
Great question. I'm going to get nervous if Dave's watching.
I'm just waiting for more people to join us.
I have a basic question.
Oh, here,
is the camera right here?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know where my eyes should be.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at the camera. Okay.
Trudy says, good evening.
Good evening, Trudy. I've never done this before. I love it. I have a question to all three of you who are watching.
Well,
does my wife usually wear glasses in these things? Is that normal or is it just tonight? That's my question.
Well, let me answer the question.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Kim says it's her first.
Oh, me too, Kim.
Yeah, see, Trudy said, I
usually glasses, Trudy. Way to go.
Okay, so let me explain the glasses. So these are...
You want to look smart?
No, it's not about looking smart.
Crazy me.
This lens has a blue, like a screen filter, like it blocks out blue light. So like if you
very functional.
Like if you stare at a computer screen too long, it can like not damage your eyes, but like you're getting some kind of blue light from your screen. So I got these on Diff. It's like a sunglass eyewear company. It's only like $60. And it's supposed to, like, if you're looking at a screen too long, it's supposed to like deflect the blue, which is probably why you can see a little bit.
All right, well, I'll get a pair.
Yeah. But I thought I would test them out, and they're so comfortable. So that's why I have them on.
Like it.
But yeah, so I'm just waiting to get started. I know that like I didn't want to get started. I didn't want to start too soon without everyone attending because I didn't want people to miss out.
We got some people joining.
Yeah, we've got Kim, Rebecca, Snum, Trudy so far. I'll give it one more minute before we start.
Has anybody ever seen when Bravo Andy has, what's it called? Bravo Live. What does he call it?
On Bravo, it's like Andy, it's his little synopsis show, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh God. It's like Andy Live or something.
Somebody just tell us what the name of it is. Anyhow, on his show, he serves cocktails on the show, so I thought we would replicate that, and so I got cocktails for Grace and me. So
cheers.
If we're slurring by the end of this, that's the reason why, just full disclosure.
Everyone go get a cocktail.
Please join us. Yeah, Kim likes that. Okay. Kim, get Dave a cocktail. Tell him he's got to tune in. Have a drink, a beer, whatever he wants to have.
Oh my God.
Glass of red wine.
So funny.
Okay.
Trudy, go get yourself a glass of wine.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Watch What Happens Live. That's what it's called.
That's what it's called.
Okay.
Watch What Happens Live.
So we're modeling this. And just so everybody knows, Grace met Bravo Andy earlier this year and was a total fangirl, following all of her. And we were supposed to take a picture. We were supposed to take a picture ourselves. And she was like, can you wait over there to me? And like, she took a picture of just him. And Anderson Cooper was there, just him and Grace and Anderson in the picture.
It was really funny. So basically, Kent set it up. Was it my birthday?
Something like that.
It was like my birthday, and Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen were like, they have a tour, the two of them. So he got tickets, and it's like either all women and like gay guys, and then maybe a couple spouses. He was like, and him.
But it was good.
Yeah, it was really good. And then he got the tickets where you can like go shake their hand and meet them in the back or whatever. And what was funny is that there was like a step and repeat, and like they had like a whole system down because so many people wanted to do it. And the four of us were taking pictures, and I'm like, okay, my turn. And I'm like, Kent, go over there. It's just me and Anderson Cooper.
Which was fine. It was great.
So it was the three of us, and I kicked him out.
We met Anderson Cooper though, and he was like, do you guys know Andy? And we're like, No, and Anderson introduced us to Andy. Super nice people.
Super nice.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we should get started.
Down to business.
Because I don't want
brass tacks.
Yeah, I don't want everyone to be like, oh my God.
What are they talking about?
What are they talking about? So I'm gonna let Kent do the honors by telling everyone what you do for a living.
Oh man.
And like explain like why you're the one talking about SWOT.
Okay. So I'm not sure why I'm talking about SWOT tonight, but I will say what I do for a living. So I have a practice advising people who run large law firms, the largest law firms in the US and globally, on how to improve their market position and how to develop their strategy so that they can achieve their aspirations. And so Grace, because Dr. Yum, how do people know you on this? Dr. Yum or Grace?
Either or.
Okay. Grace, because she has to listen to me over dinner and all the time talking about work, once in a while has said, actually, this might apply to my business. And so we've used some of what's useful for law firms and developing a strategic plan for Grace's business and more recently for MDIBs. And so through the course of working together on those things, she said, it'd be helpful maybe for people in MDIBs to hear about how you go about looking at a firm's or practices, in this case, a practice's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that kind of is the genesis of how we came to develop, or Grace suggested we do this webinar together.
Right. And I think it's really useful because we did a SWOT analysis for Yummy Dental 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it helped to create a mission statement and goals. Because some people are like, well, what do you do with a SWOT? So it's like, yeah, you do a SWOT, but what purpose does it serve? And so we wanted to, I think every business should do a SWOT analysis, and you can even do a SWOT analysis for your own personal life. Mm-hmm. And so because Kent uses SWOT analysis for large law firms, and we're talking about global firms that their clients are like United Airlines, or McDonald's, or Chick-fil-A. I mean, we're talking about global companies, corporate companies that are huge. So with that in mind, we can use it in the dental office, even though we're a microcosm, we're a small business, we can still use that analysis to help our own businesses flourish. And I thought that it was really important for everyone who does not know what it is or doesn't do one to get to know what it is and how to do one.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to use what works in big companies and apply it in a way that's appropriate and in context to a dental practice. And there's a lot, it's not all perfectly transferable, but there's a lot that you can use or consider using as you learn about this in your own practice. So that was the thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first question I would then ask Kent is, what is a SWOT analysis?
Okay.
What does SWOT mean? And
so SWOT, SWOT, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that's what SWOT stands for. And the reason why businesses develop a SWOT is to take stock of their current position as they think about where they want their business to be over time. And so developing a SWOT is very straightforward and interesting. And let me explain how you do it. And then after I explain how you do it, I'll also explain the context in which a business would develop a SWOT and what the next steps might be after you develop one. So to develop a SWOT, it usually makes sense to pull together a small group of people who are formal and informal leaders in your practice. So in a dental practice, that's going to be the doctors who are involved in the practice, both the partners as well as probably the associates in a practice. And you might also include key people like your office manager and maybe even one or two other people that are important contributors to the success of the business. And so you pull them together, and then you develop a process to pull out of a conversation what the business's greatest strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And the way I do it is very straightforward. I take out 2 flip charts. And so you've probably seen flip charts in various settings, but it's a pad, large pad that would be on a stand. And you would usually have 2 pads. And on one pad, you'd write strengths and weaknesses at the top, or I would just put S and W in a line down the middle. And on the other pad, you would have opportunities and threats, an O and a T, and another line down the middle. And then you would tell everybody who you've assembled, and it might just be, 3, 4, 5 people. Could be a little bit larger if you want it to be. You would say, we're going to brainstorm on what the practice's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are today. So this is about taking stock of where you are today before you talk about where you want to be over time. And so then you tell everybody, listen, I want you to call out what do you think are our greatest strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you also, I find it's helpful to give some instruction, and you say, this is just brainstorming. I don't want to have a debate right now about, is that really a strength? Is that really a weakness, etc. I just want you to, each person can call out as many as they would like. You don't need to go in order. You don't need to do all the strengths first, all the weaknesses second. You can just call out whatever comes to mind. And then you have somebody who's writing on the charts what people call out. And that could be an administrative person, or somebody could volunteer for that. And so you go through a brainstorming exercise, and you get as much possible out on paper as you can in each of those categories. That usually takes a little bit of time, 10, 15, 20 minutes of time, maybe even more. And the SWOT should be about what your internal and your external strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. So it can be, for example, a strength might be, we're very well known in our community. That could be a strength. And a weakness could be, we just had a competitor set up shop, in the last year, 2 blocks away. That would be an example of a weakness. Opportunity, an example of that could be, we don't do orthodontia, but there's maybe an opportunity because of our client base to get orthodontists into the practice. And so those are some examples. But the idea would be to just brainstorm and get as much out as you can on paper in each of those categories.
Yeah. I mean, I know that when I first started, the SWOT was totally different from when I did a SWOT 3 years later, so your SWOT can change year to year or even after 6 months. But my business SWOT now it's like the strengths are still the strengths, but it's funny how you can compare, and you can say, oh, well, my weakness then is no longer a weakness now, or the opportunity then we made it into a strength now, or the threat then is no longer a threat, but we turned it into an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to save your SWOT from before and hold on to it to compare. And it could just even be something like, oh, my weakness is that I don't have a strong front desk.
Mm-hmm. Great example.
A weakness could be, oh, I don't have, or a weakness could be there's just not enough of me. All the patients want to see me, even if I have an associate. That could be a weakness in the business. And then you can kind of gauge where after you map everything out, you can then kind of prioritize what you want to work on. Maybe something is more inherently just urgent than another matter.
So would it help if I talked about prioritizing?
Yeah.
So after you get everybody to brainstorm on the SWOT, the next thing you want to do, as Grace said, is you want to prioritize what do people think is really important to consider in charting your course for the future. There's a number of ways to do it. The way that I find works best, is interesting to people and also effective, is you help people vote, essentially. I would call it dot voting. Here's how it sounds a little complicated, but it's not very complicated. You count up how many items in total are in the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats across all categories. So you count all the strengths, you count all the weaknesses, you count all the opportunities, and then the threats. And in total, across the categories, you count how many there are. And say there's 50 things that are up there, which would not be unusual. Then you divide that number by 3, and then you count out dots, and you could buy these dots, the kinds of like a stickers, blue or an orange sticker on it. There'll be a sheet with 25 stickers, and you hand out to each person in the group who's doing the SWOT with you a number of dots. So it's the total number of things up on the chart divided by 3, and that's the number of dots you hand out. And then the instructions you give to everybody is, I want you to vote on what the most important things are up here.
So basically, you're only giving them a third to choose from.
Exactly.
That's why you divide by 3, because if you gave everyone 50 stickers, then you'll not be able to prioritize what's most urgent.
So, right. And that's a great point. In other words, if everything is a priority, nothing's a priority. Because if you concentrate on everything equally, then you're not concentrating on anything in particular.
Right.
So you hand out the dots. And then the instructions you give to people is the following. You say you can vote cumulatively. In other words, you could put all your dots on one thing in the SWOT, or you could use them however you like, but you could use multiple dots on one thing, fewer dots on another, however you want to do it. And so you let people dot vote that way. So you say, okay, now go up, put your dots on wherever you want to put them. After they dot vote, there's going to be some things that have more dots than others. And so usually what I would do after people vote is I would count up how many dots each thing got, and I'd write on the chart, this thing got 24 dots, and this thing got 21 dots, etc. Then I would facilitate a conversation in the group about why the voting came out the way it did. So, okay, let's look. This got the most dots. This got the least dots. There's a lot in between. Let's talk about why. Why do you think that is? And what do people think about the strengths and the weaknesses and opportunities and threats based on the dots? So that's a discussion that you, as the owner of the practice, would facilitate. After that, you have a prioritized sense of what people view as your current position in the market that you're competing in terms of your strengths and your weaknesses.
And you may not agree.
That's okay.
Your whoever's with you, whether it's your office managers or your associates or your team, what they think may totally be different from what you think. And sometimes you'll butt heads, and that's okay. So sometimes
not that would ever happen in your office.
Never. But if I'm like,
or in our house.
But I'm like, you know what? If this is a strength, and everyone's like, no, Dr. Young, that is not a strength. I'm gonna be like, yes, it is. And 20 people are like, no. Then I might have to wonder, like, well, why is it that I think it is? And they, clearly there's like a disconnect, and then it sheds light as to, maybe I need to change my perspective. And, it's like, well, Dr. Young, you're not the one answering the phones every day. So you wouldn't know if X, Y, Z is the strength, So I think it's really good to do, because it gets you out of your own thought processes, and it opens up your eyes to the rest of the team.
I agree.
And then they may not feel comfortable saying like, oh, the doctor has a problem, or like the doctor needs to work on this, or the doctor needs to work on that. But you kind of have to put yourself in a vulnerable spot to allow them to say to you, hey, you need to work on these things as well.
But I would add that you don't need to make your practice a democracy. Like, you're not going to let the waiters run the restaurant. So you're going to take into consideration what comes out of the SWOT, and it will be informative. In the end, though, you own your practice,
right?
And you're going to decide what's in the best interest of the practice. And so it's not going to be like the results of the SWOT are going to determine the future of your business without any thought. That's obviously not going to be the case, but helpful to have that input as you think about what's best, and you'll ultimately decide and chart the course for the practice, is what I would say. And, I would add that some people including in law firms, my world, but also in dental practices, would use the SWOT as a means, you know, unto itself. And it's helpful to do a SWOT and take stock of where you are and where you want to be based on the results. Some, though, would use the SWOT as a prelude to a larger process of developing a strategic plan for your practice. In other words, some would use the SWOT first to inform your thinking and the practice's thinking about where you are, but then to say, okay, let's develop a plan that has a vision for the future, where you want your practice to be. So your practice today is wherever it is. You call that point A is where your practice is now. And in 3 to 5 years, your practice is going to be at point B. Strategic planning would be about deciding what's point B. Where do you want the practice to be over time, and what do you want it to be known for? How do you want it to be performing relative to your peers and aspirational peer practices? And so you could develop a plan that starts with a vision, what the point B is, and the vision should differentiate you from other practices. It should describe how you want to be perceived in the market. And then in addition to developing and articulating the vision, which is a few sentences usually, you could develop some goals. What's it going to take to achieve the vision? In other words, with respect to your financial performance, what should your goals be over the next 3 to 5 years? With respect to growing the practice, what should your goals be? With respect to marketing and your business development, what do you want to accomplish? And so you could develop a plan. Doesn't need to be fancy, but it could be a vision for the future and goals to achieve the vision. And if you really, in my view, do it right, the goals would be granular enough so that you could measure if you're achieving them. In other words, the achievement of the goals should be quantifiable. You should be able to say, did we really get there, and not be ambiguous about it. And there should be a timeline for each goals. And you would even attach accountability to you or others in the practice for achieving each one. So if you choose to develop a plan for your practice informed by the SWOT, it would be a roadmap for where you want to take the practice and what are the things that you have to do to get there.
Right. So let me just break it down to what he just said. So once you develop all the things that you need, you take those ideas and you use it then to create your vision statement. So for me, back then, the vision statement was Yummy Dental and Orthodontics for Kids will be, because it was a vision. I had just started. So it was like, will be the preeminent pediatric dental practice known in the Chicagoland area for the best and highest standard of care. We will roll out the red carpet and treat all of our patients like they are our family.
I remember this.
We will treat everyone by the golden rule, meaning treat everyone the way you want to be treated. We will be known amongst our colleagues and develop relationships based on trust. And we will blah, 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 blah. That was like...
I remember there's something in there about we're going to treat our patients like their family.
I said that.
Okay.
So basically it was taking everything that we had, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And we took all the words and then strung together a vision statement. So once I created the vision statement, I put that in my handbook, and I made sure that all of my employees memorized the vision statement. And I was like, in order for us to be the most preeminent pediatric dental practice in the Chicagoland area, to be known as practicing the highest standard of care, everyone in my practice needed to know what my vision was and breathe it, live it, practice it, so that it was we had continuity. So from the minute the first phone call to when they walked in the door and was greeted by the front desk, every handoff the patient got, and then the hygienist went up and brought the patient back, or the dental assistant. Everything had to be consistent. And the only way we could do that was by making sure that everyone who worked at Yummy Dental knew the vision statement. So if you don't have a vision statement, that's okay, but I highly recommend that you make one. And if you, here, Trudy has a question.
Oh, I love it.
How much time should be set aside for this meeting?
Great question. So, you know, I'm not copping out, but you could make this a short meeting if you'd like it to be short. So you can make it 2-3 hours at the most.
It takes a while. It takes at least 2 hours.
Yeah. Or if you're just doing the SWOT, I would say 2 hours, you can get that done. And the thing that makes it shorter or longer is how much discussion there is among the people in the group that you assemble about what the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats are. If you choose to go beyond the SWOT and develop a strategic plan that has an articulated vision for the future and goals to achieve the vision, you might break that up into 2-3 meetings where you meet for, a couple or 3 hours at a time and you work on developing a plan. So you're going to know best what's going to benefit your practice and what will be most useful. And you shouldn't just do this to do it and waste time on it if it's not necessary. But if you think the practice would benefit from having a conversation about what's our aspiration for the future, what do we want to achieve, what are the goals to get there, you could end up, having a series of 2 or 3 hour meetings and have 2, 3, 4 of those meetings is what I would say. But you could function, you could tailor it to what you think is going to be productive for the practice without overdoing it.
Right. So for me also, I want to say that I try to do something similar every year and do an annual meeting with my team, and we'll spend like half a day doing a SWOT. And from the SWOT though, not only do I have a vision statement, I also make kind of like a wheel, like a map wheel. And then I craft our values, the Yummy Dental values. And it's for moral, kind of like a moral compass for the practice, and it steers our ship. And these values are what we hold on to as a company. And it builds morale and the team, it brings everyone together. So when we look at the SWOT, then I put up another piece of paper on the wall and I say, let's talk about our values. Let's use our SWOT and then define what values define Yummy Dental. And then it could be from empowerment, honesty, integrity, dependability, trust. All these words start to come out. And then we make kind of like a wheel, and I then have my office manager, make like a printout, and then we print it out and we tape it into the back office, into the break room. And we say, this is our vision and these are our values and we're going to stand by it.
It's a compass.
So it's a compass, but then if things get rowdy or, then all of a sudden drama is in the office, I'm like, girls, go back to the break room, read the values.
And I would add, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I would add though, that it helps you determine how you're going to spend your time, which is obviously limited, and your money, which is limited, how you're going to spend your time and your money to grow the practice for the future. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you get a resume from somebody who wants to join, or if you get a sponsorship opportunity from somebody who wants you to sponsor, or whatever it is that comes before you that requires time and money, you can take a look at your plan, take it out, and say, well, wait a second. Does hiring this person or does sponsoring this event, does it help us get to where we said we want to go in our plan? Does it help us achieve the vision and the goals in the plan? So in other words, it's a filter through which you could put any opportunity to use your time and your money to make sure you're spending those things which are limited in a way that gets you to where you want to go and to achieve your aspirations.
Right. So like equipment purchasing.
Exactly.
Is buying a Nomad really going to increase profits? Is it going to really add that much more production to your day? If the answer is no, then don't buy the Nomad. If the answer is, yeah, we're going to increase our production by, adding x-rays and being able to move room to room, and it's like an extra $2,000 a day, then then go for it. It helps to decipher, because like Kent said, you have limited resources. So it deciphers where you're going to move the needle in your practice. the thing that, Kent kind of touched on briefly was having a spreadsheet to organize all your thoughts. So I love Google Drive and I love Excel. You can easily make a spreadsheet and put on there, okay, so if my opportunity is that I can increase my referrals by going out once a month and going to meet general dentists in the area and bringing them cookies or whatever, I see that as an opportunity of relationship building and potentially bringing new patients in. I'm going to put that on the spreadsheet, and I'm going to say, and I'm going to put a date on there. And he said, action, you got to write down what your action is. Then you have to write down the date that you're going to do it. And then you got to put who's going to do it. So it's a whole accountability system. So
exactly.
that things just don't get lost. And then you're not like in the middle of September and you're like, this is September and I have no patience and my productivity is low. You want to not have a September. So what are you going to do in June, July, August so that you don't have a September or a Sucktober?
Or, I think it's a way consistent with that to hold yourselves accountable for achieving the aspirations that you have for the practice. And it doesn't mean that it's set in stone and
Right.
You create a vision and goals and then it's not working out because, the economy went south and so people aren't spending money or the competition changes and you can't get as many patients. The idea is you set some goals. They should be stretch goals, but reasonably achievable. And you use that as a way to hold yourself accountable for getting the practice to where you want it to go. But at the same time, I would consider the plan a living document.
Yeah.
You could always revisit it. And if if there's a massive recession, which everybody hopes there's not going to be, but a lot of people think the economy is going to soften. If that happens, you might update your plan accordingly. Or if there's, a competitor moves in, the building next door to you, well, that might affect how you do and you'd update the plan. So it's a living document, but just because things change and you're not in control of everything, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have some goals that you're stretching and driving to achieve and trying to hold yourself accountable for. And that's the point of the plan.
Right. And, people say that people who write goals down tend to achieve them at a higher rate or tend to accomplish those goals. So this is a really good way. So now you're taking a SWOT analysis and now you're converting it into goals, converting it to action, converting it into accountability. And then how does that affect you? It affects your business because then you make sure that you're hitting your targets. So just like you have your practice on financial goals, like you project like, okay, I want to, every year, 10% increase each month from the previous year. Those are goals that you set, but how are you going to do that? What are you going to do to increase your monthly goals by 10% financially? I think that how-to is really important in analyzing your systems and your plan. And so the SWOT is a really good way, is a good stepping stone on how to dissect all that information. Because if you sit down and you're just willy-nilly randomly like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you're kind of like, well, what's the point? Like, I'm going to do all these things, but is it really going to help? Like, is it really productive? Is it really the best use of your time? So you kind of want to sit down and think about how you're going to make the best use of your time, because time is limited, as
Exactly.
we all know, like, there's only one of you. So you don't want to be like a chicken with your head cut off running around trying to accomplish so much. You want to be able to be organized and structured so that you hit your targets.
Yeah, you kind of invest. Your time is an investment because it's so valuable. And people, obviously, you've got stuff out of work you need to do, in work you need to do. So you want to use your time in a way that you use more of it in areas where you get a higher return on that investment to improve the performance of your practice. That's the idea. So just kind of like if you're investing in the stock market, you've got a portfolio and you rebalance your portfolio to invest more in the things that are paying back more and less in the things that aren't. And the same idea with the plan. You invest your time because your time is valuable in areas which are going to give you more back over time, and you adjust to see how, depending on how things are going.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
We have to look at those.
Yeah,
Let's see.
this chat.
Okay. Boom. How much time should we set up?
We invite every employee to the meeting, or just like the team heads?
And also, is it appropriate to do over dinner?
Yeah.
So, couple thoughts. First of all, Trudy, those are good questions. I would personally not invite every employee. I would invite the people who are contributors and who are valuable to the business. But I wouldn't most businesses have people who are big performers and really contributing, and then some people who are like marginal, and some people who are like not that good and probably not going to be with you for a long time. I would definitely not invite people who are like borderline not great, because they may want to set goals that are not really stretching you, because they might be intimidated by the stretch goals because they're not big contributors. So you want to invite people who are contributing and important to the practice. And it could be at any level. I mean, you could have an assistant there. If they're killing it and really valuable to the practice, then yes. So I would invite those kinds of people who are important to the practice. Dinner, my own view on that is that it's good to do this as a meeting where you're facing each other around a round table or something equivalent. But then it's great to have dinner after as a bonding thing. In other words, you want to kind of share a common purpose and a common aspiration for the future. But I personally wouldn't have the whole meeting over dinner, but I would have dinner after the substance and then dinner as bonding. Some people who take this seriously and do a SWOT and a plan would do the SWOT I'm talking with my hands too much. A SWOT in the afternoon, then have dinner for bonding, and then come back together in the morning for a few hours and work on the plan. That might be a way to insert dinner into this.
Yeah.
What else?
I think that if anyone wants to ask any more questions, feel free. But I definitely think that we kind of covered all the questions. I don't know. Is there anything else you think that they should know about?
I think we hit the high points. I'm happy to take people who watch this afterwards and have questions. Feel free to email or message Grace. We're happy to answer them and happy to help. And, every practice is different. And so this is not the process of doing a SWOT and maybe developing a plan for your practice is not a one size fits all. Like everybody has to do it the same way. You know your practice better than anybody, and you know your aspirations. And I would take what you've learned in this webinar, but customize it to your practice, because you don't want this, you want it to be productive, but you don't want to waste time on things that are not. There was a question from Trudy. Trudy has all the good questions tonight.
Kim
oh, wait.
has a question first.
Oh, I'm sorry. First, Kim. Do you think a group of 3 is too small? No, I don't. I think I think what's most important is to have the right people at the table. And if there's 3 people who are the right people, 3 is great. So I would do it with 3, Kim. And Trudy said, do you have a template, perhaps Q&A? Yes, we do. And we'd be happy to circulate it, both a template and a Q&A.
Perfect. But yeah, I really can't stress enough the importance of doing a SWOT. And when you do it and all this stuff comes out, you're like, wow, it's really kind of
good use of time.
It's a good use of time. We just did a practice round with Yummy Dental again, and my goals have changed, so it's like I'm not the same person I was. So it's funny how when your goals start to change and you personally start to change, how your SWOT will also change. So like Kent said, it's like a living document. So it's really nice to be able to track that. But yeah, Kent will definitely give me a template to give to you guys, whoever wants
Absolutely.
it. And a spreadsheet too.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have the tools, and also happy to take questions as you think about doing a session like this.
Okay. And honestly, if you feel like you need help with how to facilitate it, feel free to reach out. Like we could definitely help you to do one. And
yeah, I would say we're not, candidly, I do this for law firms. We're not in the business of advising. We're not a consultancy on the one hand. On the other hand, we've learned a lot through my business, and Grace has a great business. And so we're happy to help, basically, and give the templates, give the Q&A, and there's a lot to be gained from this.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good. And you can even do one again for your own personal life too. So it all works out. Are there any examples you want to share of SWOTs that you've done with law firms?
I think a great one is your practice, really. I mean, with your practice, with Grace's practice, it was a startup practice.
Yeah.
9 years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago. And she was an associate at a great practice, but going to strike out on her own. She did not have any guaranteed patients who were going to come. Like, she was not able to solicit, as most people aren't. And we developed a practice that was Grace developed a practice with a little input when she asked for it for me. That was a total startup. And you did a SWOT. I remember when we were in an apartment before we had kids, we did a SWOT for this practice, and we've done about 3 since. And I think the point is, this is relative to your business, and it fits where you are, wherever your practice may be, and where you want to be, and everything is relative, and the plan is not going to be the same for everybody. A better way I would put that is, you're probably going to want to create a stronger version of what your practice already is. You're not going to want to make a practice something it's not, if your practice is 2 offices, you're not going to say, okay, we want to be 20 offices overnight. Right. But instead you're going to say, hey, we're going to want to be 2 or maybe 3 or 4 offices, but performing at a higher level, maybe having a culture that prizes high performance more. Maybe you want to make more money than you do. Maybe you're going to want to grow your patient base, but the idea is incremental improvement relative to from where you're starting. That's the idea.
Janice raised her hand. I don't know. Janice, do you have a question? I don't know here. Janice, I don't know if you have a question or not.
Is she going to come on the screen?
I don't know.
That'd be awesome.
Janice.
I have a question. When our kids are crying, do I go or do you go during the webinar? That's my question.
I would go.
I'll go. Should I go?
Well, you have to answer the question.
Oh, okay. I'll answer the question, but you have to be fast.
I don't know, Janice. Yeah. Janice, do you know how to ask a question? Because I see that your hand is raised.
Wait.
It says, hold on, unmute.
Oh.
Janice raised her hand, but I, for some reason, can't see your question.
I like the number of participants. I'm liking the growth there.
Yeah. Hold on, let me ask Alicia. Alicia, how do you get Janice's question?
We could ask our producer.
Janice just needs to type the question in the panelist chat on the right-hand side of the screen.
Okay. So Janice, if you still have a question, you can go to the chat on the bottom of the toolbar here and type in your question. But I don't see it. All right. Hi, Erin. Lindsay.
Should I make up Janice's question?
Sure.
No, I'm just joking.
Well, okay. I'm going to go check on the baby, or not a baby, or
screaming.
Child who's screaming.
You're going to leave me in charge?
Yes, you're in charge.
All right, look out.
All right.
This could go off the rails. Okay, I'm taking the driver's seat. What do we got? Janice. It says Janice raised her hand. Let's see here. Hold on. I'm going to go ahead and chat. All right, Kim just saw the hand raising button, which I appreciate. But Kim, you need to use that button to ask a question now. We need questions. You know, in the absence of a question, I would just chime. I'm an independent observer. I'm a husband of somebody who owns practice. Obviously, I'm not a dentist. But you guys are in a great business. that many of which that I've seen as an observer, friends of ours and people who I've met through Grace, a lot of practices succeed in spite of themselves. In other words, the dentist is just focused on dentistry and treating patients, which is great, but they're not really paying attention to the financial performance and charting a course for the future, and they still do well year after year. So the way I would think about the SWOT and the plan is not so much you have to do it and it's going to like make or break your practice. I don't think it will for most of you, but this is an opportunity to go to the next level, to strengthen the business and to be a better version of yourself. So that's the way I would think about this stuff. It's, you know, it's kind of a bonus. Okay, wait. There's a question from Trudy. Where is that? Let's see here. Oh boy, this is the danger of Grace leaving me in charge. I have no idea how to get Trudy's question up here. I have no clue. Wait, Janice. Okay, wait, a question comes. She's thinking of hiring a consultant. Should she wait until after the SWOT? Great question. You know, at the risk of telling you too much, Grace has hired a consultant or two in her day, and there's some that are better than others, is our experience. If it were me, you all are very smart people. I would do the SWOT first. It's not essential to have a consultant for the SWOT. And I would take stock of where the practice is, where you want it, you know, where you aspire it to be over time, and think about what it takes to get there. And I personally, and the people who make a living being consultants to dentists, I'm sure would disagree with this, but I personally would do the SWOT. I would chart a course for the future and think about what it takes to get there. And I would wait to hire a consultant until you get stuck and you need some input on best practices, or you need help getting over a big challenge. So I would get this going and do as much as you can on your own. And then if you feel like you need some outside expertise, I would think about doing that, would be my take. What else? Kim, you raised your hand to say you enjoyed this. I'm grateful. I love it. Thank you. I hope Gabe's watching. What else? Give me more. Question from Kim. What has your experience been with team members that are essential to the business, but maybe aren't as motivated as we are? So maybe aren't as motivated as we are. Such a good question. You know, in an ideal world, your team members would act like business owners. That's what you want. You want them to be aligned with you. In other words, striving to improve the business the way you do as an owner. And my experience is that money talks, and ideally you incent them, and I think a lot of you are already doing this, but ideally you incent them to make decisions and invest their time in a way that compensates them for acting like a business owner. And so a lot of practices do that by having a portion of their compensation, even for junior people, even for assistants, a portion of their comp that's variable and determined by the doctor who owns the practice based on their own performance and the performance of their business. In other words, you want them acting in the best interest of the business, and so you pay them partially on how the business does in addition to how they do. That helps. I know Grace does that, and I encourage her year after year to increase the percentage that's paid in incentive pay based on how the business does. I love it. More questions are coming. Okay, so another one that just came in. I have 4 employees in a small practice, not sure if I'd include them since I just bought the practice. Should I include my husband? Husband. Should I include my husband since he's involved but doesn't work for me? Question from Sanam. So, Grace is back. No, you're not back? Come on. Come here. So, first of all, I would include, of the 4 employees that you have, Sanam, if they're all very important to the business, in other words, if they're all big contributors, I'd include all of them. If there's, 3 that are big contributors and one's kind of not a big contributor, I would not include the last one. And should you include your husband? I think it depends on the husband's role. If the husband is providing you valuable guidance from a business perspective or in some other way, and you think it's good for the business, yeah, I wouldn't include the person because they're your husband, but I would include the person if they're a valuable advisor to the business. If you think that their advice is really helping you get to where you want to go, yeah, I would include them, whether it's a husband or friend or whoever the advisor is, would be my advice on that. Another question, good one from Trudy. Should we wait till after the holidays? Seems like some of the content discussed may bring up sour feelings for some. I agree. Also, how do you keep the staff from getting their feelings hurt? Okay, those are really good questions. If it were me, I would tee this up now before the holidays. I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't do all the work on the SWOT and the plan before the holidays necessarily. Although I would think about, when do you have time? If your practice has a lull before the holidays and people, you're paying everybody, but there's not a ton of patients, I might take advantage of that time and get this going. If you're jammed before year end, I might have a short meeting to say, hey, we're going to develop a SWOT and a strategy. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the vision behind it. And here's the process that we're going to use. And we're going to have our first meeting in a lull, after January 1st. So I think you want to be smart and kind of use time when you're paying people, but they can't be producing the way you want them to produce. How do you keep the staff from getting their feelings hurt? It's a great question that comes up in small businesses and big businesses. I think what you want to care about is the high performers. Staff and doctors who are killing it, who are high performers, you want to manage to their interests. The people who are so marginal performers or not doing great, you don't want to manage to them. You don't want to bring the business down by managing to the lowest common denominator. Instead, you want people who are really contributing to feel inspired and to feel a part of creating a vision for the future and developing a plan to achieve it. So you want to be thinking about the people who are really contributing. And if there's something that's going to upset them, don't do it. In other words, manage to the high performers and help them be empowered to work with you to shape a vision for the future, and let that be your guide. You want to have the development of a SWOT and a plan, inspire into the people who are really contributing to the practice. That's what you want to do.
And you can even put like some boundaries on it. Like you're going to say, like, we're not going to talk about personal jabs, or we're not going to go in that direction. It's going to be strictly about the business, and that way you can avoid any type of personal feelings. I mean, for me, when I start my meetings, I'm always like, first and foremost, think about what you're going to say before you say it. Secondly, treat everybody like you want to be treated. Third, this is a business. Keep your emotions out of it. This isn't something that we're going to get emotional about. Like, this is a business plan. So I want everyone to put on a business hat and think like a business owner. And I preface the meeting like that. And I say, if you have something personal you want to share and you want to bring it to me later, you can do so privately, but I don't want it out in the open because this is not the time and place for it.
Good advice.
But maybe that's just me. And
maybe you're a hard ass.
But you could do it differently.
No, I agree. I think that, the key is to focus on where do you want the business to be over time and what do you need to do to get there. And there might be other topics that come up, including personal topics. that are interesting, but I think you want to put those in a parking lot, kind of put them aside, and really talk just about the things that are going to really move the needle to get the practice to where you want it to go. That's how you should spend your time in these sessions.
Mm-hmm.
That's any other questions. What else?
I think that it's really, I think that once you get started, and or if you feel uncomfortable doing it by yourself, you should maybe ask a third party to facilitate. Great point. So like, I don't know who said bring their husband, but maybe
that's a role.
Maybe that's a role that they could play as a facilitator if you feel confident they can do it. Like Trudy, I think your husband is a business, like doesn't he have a business degree? So like maybe your husband would be the one to facilitate it, and you're gonna just be part of the group and contribute.
It's a really good question. I would add on that point that, some practices are more top down, and you as the owner are really charting the course, and maybe you don't have any associates, and you don't need buy-in on where you're going to go. Grace's practice, kind of like that. She is the only equity partner in it. She owns the whole thing. Everybody works for her, from the associate dentist to the staff. And when we do her SWOT and plan, it's her that drives it. It's not other people. And so you might say, you know what, my practice is like that. And maybe you're the person who's driving this and you don't include a bunch of other people. And that would be fine. So I think you need to think about your practice, who the key people are in contributing to its success, and who has an ownership or acts like an owner, and then include those people. But it's not a problem. If it's just you, that's okay. And you might work with an advisor like Grace did with me, or Grace could have worked with somebody else to develop a plan.
So like for me, the SWOT and the vision, that was all me. Like I didn't include any of them. However, I do a yearly SWOT for the business with the team.
Yeah.
To see what they come up with, and to see,
great point.
Like to kind of compare and contrast what I did versus what they did. However, why I do it is not just for the comparison, but I do it so that they feel empowered. So I invite the whole team to do a SWOT with me so that they feel like they're part of our team, except that the SWOT that we do with the team isn't used for vision statements, if that makes sense. So, that's probably, for me, that's why I like to do it that way. I think Trudy's says that, she wants to reemphasize that this is her business, because they start to look at him as the business boss when he comes and I'm just the dentist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trudy, then you should run it,
If he's an advisor, then have him work as an advisor to you, but you run it. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, but that's a fine balance. It's hard because if he's in the practice a lot, I can see where they naturally gravitate towards your husband, but you want to make a big point that you are the owner and that you're the one that's going to be in charge of where your practice is going. So I think, I'm not sure exactly what your dynamics are, but I totally get what you're saying and your point. But I think that's the, before we go, if there's anybody else that wants to ask a question, feel free, but we are coming to an end. We've only got 2 minutes left, so I just thought that I would invite anybody else. Sorry, Janice, I don't see any questions from you. And I don't know if anybody else wants to ask, but feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to share resources and answer further questions. And hopefully it was informational and everyone will feel confident to do a SWOT. And I'll let Kent say goodbye. Here, I just turned the computer so you can see it.
Hey, I didn't know what to think when Grace asked me to do this, and it's more fun than I thought it would be. Great. I'm grateful to do it, and I'm happy to take questions later as people start to do this stuff. And, as everybody is with their spouse, I'm proud of my wife. I love what she's doing here, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support it, including helping everybody with their plans. So fire away anytime on questions, and we're happy to help.
All right. Have a good night. Bye. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Rebecca.